I'd like to call the May meeting of the Jackson City School Board of Education to order. Have a roll call, Ms. Strother.
McDonald,
Present?
Moore,
Present.
Harless. Here. Morris,
Here.
Smith.
Here.
All are present.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Smith,
Yes.
Harless,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes. And I need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Smith,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Harless,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Howard?
Okay, it's recommended that the board approve the consent agenda as follows. Item A, recommended that the board approve the resignations of Michelle Goheen, Mary Goings, Mitzi Jones, and Teresa McGinnis for the positions as noted. Item B is a recommendation to employ an exempt employee, and that employee is Ashley Miller, and she will actually be taking the place of Teresa McGinnis, who is leaving for a treasurer's position at the ESC in Athens. And that would be a 14-month contract, because we've only got 2 months left in this current contract. So rather than make it for a year or for 2 months, I just went with a 14-month contract there. It's also recommended that the board approve Tanya Mercer for a continuing contract. Item D, recommendation to approve a whole host of teachers for 3-year contracts. I'm not going to read through those names unless you really want me to, Mr. McDonald.
No, that's not necessary.
Okay. Item E is a recommendation to approve a list of teachers for 2-year contracts, and again, there's several of those. Item F, recommendation to approve 1-year limited teaching contracts for 5 or 6 individuals. Item G is a recommendation to employ Madison Rideout Jones and Alicia Smith as new teachers for next year. Item H is a recommendation to approve Katie Hemsley for a limited teaching contract next year with a contingency. Item I is a recommendation to approve the list of the graduating seniors. And item J is a recommendation to approve the list of the Hall of Honor recipients for this year, and that would be Richard Dick Berry, Gordon Jim Reynolds, and Mr. Pete Wilson. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Any board members have any items that need removed for separate consideration? Seeing none, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Smith,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Harless,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes. Move on to the financial report. Mrs. Strauser.
Item A is a motion to approve the financial report for the period ending April 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Moore,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Harless,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
And that's all I have, Mr.
Okay.
President.
All right. Information and discussion items, Mr. Howard.
If the board would allow me to, I know I only have one item on here, but I have a couple of other things that I really want to discuss first, because this one will probably be the lengthier. I want to talk for just a second about our upcoming graduation and our senior recognition. And I'm hearing a lot of positive comments about our graduation and the way that we're actually doing it. Our students are coming in, they were allowed 4 guests. We've allowed the graduate to determine who's going to actually present the diploma. We've had a staging area, we staged an area in the field house where they could go and take some pictures. It's been a long process. Mr. Haynes and Mr. Schwackhammer and some of our other people have put in long days, 10, 15 minutes per student, and tomorrow will be the final day for graduates. Some of the things that we've done to recognize our graduating class, if you've been uptown, and I know you've all seen it, if you take a look at the valedictorian banners uptown, I think those look really good. I've had a lot of positive comments about that. I want to take time to thank Mayor Evans for partnering with the school district to do that. We were having a discussion one day and talking about ways that, you know, we might be able to recognize and honor our graduates, and this was something that was done in some other town. You know, very few ideas anymore are original. Everybody steals everybody's ideas, and so we decided that if the school district would purchase those, Mr. Evans said that he would get them put up for us, and he's done that, so I want to thank him for that. Also, a couple of other things. We have, last board meeting, we talked about these yard signs, and Mr. Moore talked about those, and I know I want to thank him for taking the bull by the horns there and getting those signs ordered, and I believe you went with the larger, the 2x3s?
Yes.
2x3s. Those signs will be in around the 16th.
They'll be in Friday. I talked to her today. They'll be in Friday, be completed Friday.
Okay.
So I'll be picking them up, and then maybe we can gather up a few people to help me
Put them in.
put them out there, yeah. And we also have a banner recognizing the people that helped make this possible. And I'd like for the 2020 students to sign it. That's what my goal is, so, and then
Okay.
give that back to you and Thad, and maybe we can hang it up in the school somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, we'd be glad to do that. We plan on putting those yard signs, I'd like to try to keep them up on top of the hill as much as we can. You get too close down to the road, you run up, gives opportunity for people to vandalize and so forth. So I think we can appropriately display them up on top of the hill, 180 of them. So that'll be something, and we'll you know, it won't take long for word to get out by social media or whatever that they're up here, and people can drive up by and look for their kids' picture. So we've done that also. Another couple of things that are unique to this year as opposed to in the past, WOUB had contacted Mr. Haynes, and so I don't have the date for that. We'll get that information out later, but WOUB will be airing, I think it's a 28-minute, they gave us 28-minute slot to be able to do whatever we want to do to honor and recognize our students. So again, another thing falling on the shoulders of our tech people. They're going to put together a program, a 28-minute program that people will be able to see on WOUB. And we also purchased a spot on WVAH and WCHS. That's Channel 8 and Channel 11. One of them's Fox News. And people will be able to go there. And I know that date is the day after our graduation, May 23rd. And that's at 7:00 p.m. It won't be the actual copy of the graduation, what you just saw the night before. Once again, it will be something that our tech people have put together, and I think we're allowed a full hour on that one. I envision that one being more probably our valedictorians giving their speeches, and all 168 of our other students, when they were up here during the graduation, we filmed them giving their plans after graduation, and so we'll probably use that as a part of that. So they were selling half-hour increments, but we couldn't get ours done in a half hour and be able to recognize everybody, so we ended up purchasing a full hour with WVHS and WCHS. So just wanted to bring that to the forefront of some of the things that's going on to be able to appropriately recognize our graduating seniors.
Mr. Howard, did they give you a time that that's going to air the day after graduate on the 23rd?
That will be at 7:00. 7:00. The WOUB one, we haven't got confirmation yet of when, even the date or the time on that one. But the WVAH and WCHS is 7:00 on the day after our graduation. And also, on our actual date of graduation on Friday, May 22nd, normally what we do is, and we don't usually get to see this because we kind of hang out in the field house and just walk up, 3 minutes before the graduation starts. But before we get into the stadium, there's always a program being played on the big screen, senior film and some of those kind of things. So what we plan to do on the 22nd, on the night of graduation, the actual graduation, we plan for it to start at 8 o'clock. But there will be some preliminary stuff that will be on there. So if you want to tune in, I don't know that it'll start exactly at 7 or whatever, but prior to the graduation, there will be some things that people might want to see that will have to do with our graduating class. So just wanted to put that out there also.
Now, you're saying the graduation. We don't want people to think that there will be a ceremony that night, right?
No, it'll just be, you'll be able to watch it on, we'll have a link, and it's the compilation of everything that's taken place here in the last 5 days where the
Right.
diplomas have already been presented.
Will link to our website.
We will put that on there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll be able to go to our district website and get the link and click on it and watch. But one of the reasons that I wanted to do some of these other things with the normal TV is that, everybody doesn't have access to Wi-Fi, and even if there's some of our people who might not even be able to watch it because they don't have cell phone service or whatever. So this way, most people do have TV, or cable, so they'll be able to see it in some form or fashion if they can't get on the link and get internet. So thought it was important to be able to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to watch that. Real quick, the end of the year, our principals have put together a process that will allow students to be able to come and pick up their materials, clean out lockers and so forth, and we've done that in a way that aligns with the guidelines, no more than 10 students in the building at a time. I think the elementary, what they're doing is, I believe the teachers are going to come in and clean out things, have them in bags, and then parents will have been given times, and they will pull up, and the exchange of the materials will take place outside of the building. So those things are in place to finish out the school year. Next year, I've gotten lots of questions about what are we going to do for next year, and the answer to that is I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. We've been asked to come up with plans for I think at best, and this is a guess, maybe by the middle of August, everything's completely back to normal and we're back to square one. I don't look for that to happen. We've talked about a blended opportunity for education where students will come in part of the time. They'll be physically in school a couple of days a week maybe, and they'll be learning remotely the other days. I was asked at one point in time to come up with a couple of plans, and knowing that those plans are going to change from week to week maybe, depending upon how this thing goes now that the economy's opened back up. But the most common plans that I saw one example of where half the students would come on Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday. The other half would come on Tuesday, Thursday, and every other Friday. I saw plans where students would come on Monday and Wednesday, some would come on Tuesday and Thursday, and then Friday, only the staff would come, and those students, when they're not in school, the 2 days that they're not in school, or the 3 days, depending upon which week it is, they would be working from home. One plan that I saw that I kind of liked, if I don't like any of them, honestly, but if we have to go that route, would be students would come to school maybe on Monday and Tuesday, the same group of students. Another group of students, the other half would come on Thursday and Friday, and then on Wednesday, right in the middle of the week, before you have a different group of students coming in, that would be the day that no students would come to school, and your custodial staff would do a robust cleaning and sanitizing of the building on that Wednesday before the next group of kids came in for 2 days. Staff could still report that day, the teachers probably could, and could work from school to assign their online learning. So those are some things that I know people want to know as soon as possible, because people need to make plans to so they can go to work, and whether they need babysitters and all that stuff. And I promise that we will get that information out to you as soon as possible. We're just in limbo right now as well, so we're not withholding any information. Nobody just seems to know for sure what's going to happen at this point, and it seems to be changing every week. So as soon as something is final, but I don't expect that to be until late July or middle of July at least, we'll get that information out to you so that you can plan accordingly. Because trust me, I mean, it's a nightmare for us right now trying to plan on how we're going to do these things. We spend a lot of time coming up with all these plans, and then the next week you're told that, well, that won't work, so you're going to have to come up with something else. And I don't know that, even something might be decided for us that even cutting down the number of students in your building to half might not be enough. It might be that, kids come to school 1 day a week and the other 4 they're learning remotely, or 2 days a week and learning remotely 3 days a week. We don't know what that's going to look like going forward. But I do want to put out there that there's probably a greater chance than not that it will not be what we're accustomed to when school starts back in August. So, having said that, the one item that I did have on the agenda is the compensation of our spring supplemental contracts. And let me tell you, the reason that this is important is because we have to pass a resolution, and it needs to be done tonight because those people typically get paid early June. Our next board meeting is not until the end of June, and we've been asked or told by legal that we need to, because of the situation this year, and there were no spring sports because the High School Athletic Association canceled the spring sports before the official games started. So the board has to tonight make a decision of how we're going to compensate our spring coaches. And I'm going to give you some examples and give you my thoughts on it, and then we can open it up for discussion, and we'll go from there. First of all, let me say this up front. I love our coaches. I think we got great coaches. I wouldn't trade them for anybody else. But the fact is that we didn't have a season this year. And so to be able to justify that our coaches receive 100% of their pay, I can't say that as a superintendent. So we're going to have to decide tonight if we're going to pay our coaches 100% of their salaries, or are we going to prorate it. Some districts have decided that they are going to pay 100%. Some districts have decided that it's going to be prorated, a third, fourth, half, whatever the percentage or ratio they've determined. And that's going to be up to you tonight. We did attempt to be able to resolve this with our, we had a meeting less than a week ago with the union leadership and a sampling of the coaches. It was apparent in that meeting that the coaches and the union leadership feel that they should be paid 100% of the pay. I have a difference of opinion. I don't know how we can say that it's okay to pay coaches 100% whenever we didn't have a single game. We decided at that time to send out a survey to our coaches and ask them several questions. Amongst those questions was a question, and it really wasn't put on the survey to determine how much we were going to pay, but just to give us feedback in making this decision. But one of the questions was, what percent of the work do you think that you fulfilled of your contract? And to take a look at those things. We've gotten those results back, and I've shared that with you. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to you guys to see what you think we need to do. In my honest opinion, what I'm leaning towards right now, and I'm going to hesitate here at making a recommendation until I hear everybody's feedback, and then at that point I'll make a recommendation, and you can do what you would like. But I think 50% is more than fair, because I'll be the first to say that some of them have put in a lot of work. There's a lot of work that takes place before the season. I know that. I go by, I see these guys working on fields and doing those kind of things. but I can't get out of my head that the kids didn't get to play a single game. And so I really struggle with, making that 100%. I'm also trying to put out of my head that just this week, we were told that we lost $386,000 in funding for the remainder of this school year. But besides that, it's just hard for me to swallow 100%. I think that 50% is more than fair for our coaches. Another option that was brought to me by a board member would be that we pay our coaches 50%, and we take that remaining 50% and we put it into their activity account, whatever sport it is they're coaching. I think it's pretty evident that fundraising for next year is going to be difficult. Our businesses and the people in our community, a lot of them are hurting. They're not going to be able to support every time like they've done in the past, where people come knocking on their door for donations for everything under the sun. One way to justify that is that other 50%, and you say, well, how does that help us? We still spend 100%. That is true, but that 50% is going to the kids for next year in the program, and it's also helping our community, our businesses, and our citizens, because hopefully our coaches will then decide that, they might not have to they might be able to get by with one less fundraiser or two less fundraisers of having kids go and knock on doors and ask people for money. So that's another option that was given to me. So basically, you've got pay them 100% and move on, pay them 50%, or pay them 50%, take the other 50% that was left and put it into their activity account for next year. Or maybe somebody here has something that I haven't thought of. I'll open it up to you guys for discussion.
Just a question,
Yeah.
this form you gave us, we're just looking at athletics now, not the academic.
Yeah. Just to be clear here on how much money we're talking about, our spring sports coaches' pay at 100% would be about $62,000.
I mean, just from I have a hard time paying for something that we didn't get a result out of. We didn't have a single game, a single race run, a single scrimmage. I couldn't pay my people 100% for not being at work, and I don't want to take away from the time that these guys and ladies put in preseason. It's important, that time. That's when you prepare for the season, but there were they missed out on the late nights bus rides and those kind of things taken away from their families that we compensate them for. I really do like the idea of paying 50% and putting the other 50% back into the programs. As a business that gets hit up for basically every fundraiser going through Jackson, and we really try hard not to ever, to never say no. This year's going to be tough. Those the monies that we usually have put back for marketing and those kind of things. We do a lot of our marketing through the athletic programs. We've been shut down since March 16th. It's just not going to be there. When we have to make cuts, those are the kind of things, unfortunately, that they have to get cut. So I like that idea. I wish I would have been the one that had the foresight to think it up.
What, a few months ago, didn't we have a similar situation talking about bus drivers where they're driving a certain number of hours and being paid for another number of hours? How did we resolve that? I don't remember.
Actually, that was during the OPSI contract negotiations. Time flies, but that's been a couple years ago.
2 years.
2 years
Has it
ago.
been that
Yeah.
long?
And what we did was we took a pretty hard, firm stand on that, and ended up negotiating something completely different in the contract, where they're now paid for the actual amount of time that they work.
Is that something we're gonna do with these contracts? Are we gonna change a resolution to say that if something like this happens again, are we going to only pay a certain percentage?
That's a good point, and I was waiting for the right time to bring that up. One of the things that needs to be mentioned here is that going forward, for example, in the fall, I mean, there's a lot of talk that we may not even have any fall sports, or it could be an abbreviated season or whatever. we have already hired our head coaches for the fall. So whatever we do tonight is going to lock us in the fall if we don't have sports. We're gonna still, if this board decides tonight that we're gonna pay 100%, then everyone who's already been hired for the fall sports will get 100%. Now, I will say this, that last month, and you gotta understand that this has never ever happened before. It's new to everybody, you know, people are just kind of feeling their way. I've learned something in this, and I'm sure every other superintendent has as well. Typically, what we do here is we hire our coaches pretty early because coaches want to know that they've got a job. They want to get things ready. So we don't wait until, you know, the last second. Hardly anybody does that I know. For one reason, coaches start so early before their season actually starts working with kids. So it's important that they're hired early. But last month is normally the month that we hire all of our assistant coaches. I did not put the assistant coaches on the agenda for last month for that reason, because I don't want to be locked into whatever we do now. I've suggested to the union, and I'm hoping that, you know, we can work this out, that we come up with a memorandum of understanding that going forward, if this happens, that we're going to do X, whatever that is that we can agree on. Right now, we don't have that. So, you know, their thought is that we owe them the full 100%. I think that it's ridiculous that we would pay 100% for coaches whenever we didn't even have a game. But going forward, we need to have a memorandum of understanding so that we can go ahead and hire those coaches, but understand that if this were to happen, a situation like this would happen, that the board is not out. Because I can tell you, in the fall, it won't be $59,000 or $62,000. It'll be considerably higher than that, because there's more sports, there's more assistant coaches. Some of those sports are considered major sports, and they're compensated at a much higher rate. So it could be, and I don't want to put Ms. Strasser on the spot, but it could be $100,000 or more, you know, for the fall. So I think that we need to consider that what we do now will determine, at least for the head coaches in the fall, because they've already been hired.
I don't understand. Part of the reason we're talking about how much the spring coaches get paid is because they've put in work. They've put in time as far with the kids. They've done preseason training and conditioning and those kind of things. Using that as our example of what we're going to do in the fall really isn't apples to apples, because those
Exactly.
preseason times never would have started. They haven't. That's not taken away from scouting and watching film and those kind of things for the fall. But that time that we're trying to figure out how much, you know, with the survey of how much time did you actually put in, you know, what percentage of your job did you do, that won't be the same in the fall as it was for this spring group.
It won't be, because facilities have completely been shut
That's
down.
what I'm saying. They haven't spent the time.
But what will be the same is the fact that they've got a signed contract.
Okay.
But I agree. I mean, I think we wait because we don't know whether they're gonna do anything. If they don't do anything, I mean, I think that we have to take that into consideration, that I know we've hired them, but we hire them based on what they do during the season now. If they've done a percentage of it, we may have to pay them like we did these guys and gals, but I think we wait because it's real.
Oh, yeah, I'm not suggesting that we decide that that's what's gonna happen. I'm just saying that it's gonna appear at that point in time that whatever we do tonight is
We need to
what
do in the
we're gonna
fall.
end up
Right.
doing the
Okay.
same
Yeah.
thing in the fall. I get what Dr. Morse is saying
Yeah.
here, because really, the fall sports people may have done far less than the spring
That's
sports
what I'm
people,
saying. You
because
said
they
we
haven't
need
even.
a
Yeah, I
memorandum of
disagree with that
understanding of how we're
comment.
going to go into the fall, and what we do now is going to carry over to that.
It's
Right.
not apples
It's a
to
whole,
apples.
okay,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
all right, we're on the same page. Sorry.
So if they take the fall sports and say, okay, we're gonna do them in the spring, does that still carry their contract as fall sports, but it's held in the spring? Which could happen.
Yeah, I think it
How's that
would.
work with the contracts?
Well, the contracts don't say fall sport, winter sport, spring sport. It just says, you know, head football coach, head baseball coach, or whatever. So if you're the baseball coach,
For the school year.
For the
For the
school
school
year.
year.
yeah, for the school
Yeah.
year. Is that not correct, Mr. Stevens?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And also, along those lines, I was just reading OHSA memo before I came down. The OHSA has not even tinkered with the idea of moving fall sports to the spring, or putting spring back to the fall. That got out there, that is not coming from OHSA. And along the lines of what you guys were talking about putting the money back in those programs, and Mrs. Stroller can speak to this a little bit too. Everything I read, if we have events in the fall, the way it looks right now, there will not be fans in the stands. And Mrs. Stroller can tell you, to put on a football game is a very, very expensive venture. And there are certain things that I buy from our ticket revenue to help those programs. If I don't have that revenue, I'm not gonna be able to help those programs buy some of the things they need. So if that is then in their budget from this, it helps the athletic department as a whole, the way I see it. And it's not necessarily the things that the money that brings in the fall is spent in the fall, it's spent in the winter. And then it's really spent in the spring because Mrs. Stroller can tell you, we're lucky to break even on a baseball or softball game. Unless it's a day like today, a really good opponent, you know. So you rely on that money you make in the fall and the winter to help get you through the spring. But if we're having games in the fall and the winter with no spectators, things are gonna get really bleak very, very quickly as far as the bottom line, you know, for our budget. And I am not more upset than, I'm the most upset person in the room about our kids not getting to participate this year. I mean, I told somebody the other day, I've been going to baseball games, softball games, and track meets for 21 years, and bam, it's going out of my life, I don't have it now. But, you know, on the other hand, it did save me some money. We're probably a little better off financially than we have been in a few years. But I would gladly be back to not being as well off financially for our kids to participate. But that money will go away quick if we don't have insurance. And everything I read coming from the OHSA or anybody I talk to connected in Columbus, that is if we go back to having sports, very, very likely scenario that there won't be fans in stands.
You're saying any money that we saved for refs and busing, we need to be saving it.
We do, and, you know, when you don't,
Right.
you know, there's a lot of events that draw more people than others, obviously.
Right.
But when you have a junior high soccer game, you know, you hope to make enough money, pay your timekeeper and your 2 officials, which for that sport are very, very expensive. And if you can just pay those bills, you feel good about it, and your ticket. You know, so, I see a bunch of changes coming. If we don't have fans in the stands, it's,
Well, let me say this, that, you know, we have had many years where we've had to subsidize the athletic department. The goal was always to have the athletic department not be in the red at the end of the year. And we've had a lot of years where it has been in the red and we've had to subsidize. I think Bob Kite did a great job during his tenure here of some of the things that he implemented with the parking and so forth to be able to keep the athletic department in the black. I think we've probably as much as $50,000 or $60,000 before subsidized the athletic department. And that was on years where we did have people in the stands. Can you imagine what we would have to subsidize if we don't have anyone, we have no revenue coming in because we're not gonna be charging people because nobody's gonna be allowed to come to the games, but we're still gonna have all those expenses, the transportation expenses, your, you know, officials and all that. I mean, you could be subsidizing $150,000, $200,000 from the general fund to the athletic fund for our kids to be able to play sports.
And what you mentioned early, we've lost $386,000 just for the remainder of this year. The new budget coming out in July, I believe. We don't have any idea how much we may lose or how many more cuts we take. We
Well,
have to
they're
take that
telling
into
us right now that
consideration.
it could be up to 20% cut for next year, which for us could be $2.8 million. We get about $14 million from state funds, so it could be a $2.8 million cut for next year. Any other ideas or suggestions on the compensation piece for the coaches here?
I can't do 100% to the coaches when the kids had no season. I very much am for the 50 to the coaches and 50 to the program. I think the kids lost, they had no season. If you ask them, you know, no one made all-leg, no one won any games, they won't get a letter. They didn't participate, so they lost everything. So to pay 100%, that just does not seem right. There was not a game played. But I will be for the 50-50 and help the spring sports, because I am, like Dr. Morris, is one that contributes to everything too. And it's gonna be different. I just got a feeling it's gonna be different raising money. But that's where I stand on that.
I agree. I agree that I think 50% is fair, and I also think that putting the 50% back in the program is fair, and it's a good idea, and I would support that.
So I look at some of these and I see, you know, percentages we ask our coaches to put down that they feel they believe they completed. I see anywhere from 40, you know, to 90 to 95. I mean, I don't know, I feel like 50 might be a little low.
If you, if you look at the dates on some of those, I believe they started in, November, I believe? Excuse me. Up through about February, or end of February, the beginning, early part of March. So that's, to me, you know, if you break it down in percentage, and I know I looked at those surveys that we got, and some of them did more than others, and I'm not saying that they didn't put a lot of effort into it, but the season hadn't started, you know, the games, you know, were ready to start, and like Mr. Moore said, I feel really bad for the kids, because they didn't get to do all the things that he mentioned, and I think that, you know, I think we're being fair, and we're still paying 100%, but we're still helping out each individual sport also.
To comment on Kim, the ones that's 90 or 95, that means that the season, whatever sport that was, the whole season is only 5% or 10%. I can't come up with that. I can't do that math and make that work where I understand that.
I think probably because the seasons are so small, it's like a quick season for most baseball, softball, and all
Yep.
those are 1 month.
Yep.
It might be every day, every
yeah.
week, but it's usually a shorter season than, say, football,
Sure.
basketball, you know. So
But
maybe
I
they feel
think
like all the
that-
prep work they
I think
did
there was
prior
something-
to.
I think there was something like 26 games in baseball.
27.
27 games, and then we all make the tournament, so really you're gonna play 28. So, and not a pitch was thrown, not an out was made. I don't see that coming up. No way I can get that's 5% or 10%.
Okay, unless someone has anything else, I'm prepared to make a recommendation, and I'm going to recommend that the board approve or ratify payment of the supplemental contracts for the 2019-20 spring sports supplemental contracts at 50% of what they would have received, with the other 50% going into their special activity account. So if I could have a motion to that.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, 50% for the coaches and 50% of the proceeds go back into the program.
Morris,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Harless,
No,
Smith,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Mr. Howard, do you have anything else?
That concludes my part of the discussion items.
Okay. We got closing items from board members. Does board members have any items or any
Yes.
remarks?
At the last meeting, we discussed maybe doing some sort of plaque or something to honor the class of 2020 and the things that they've sacrificed. We had talked a little about that, Mr. Howard, about, I've come up with a couple of ideas, and Ms. Smith we've discussed some quotes, something inspirational to put on that. I just need to, so I have an idea of maybe a granite plaque, 24 by 18, something like that. I just need to know from Mr. Howard where you're going to want to display it, because the design of the plaque dictates, we need to know if it's going to be on a wall, if it's going to be on a stand, something like that, and before I could actually order it. I was really pleased, Ms. Smith she came out last month and decided to help with that. The graduating class of 1974, the graduating class of 1996, and the class of 98 have decided to go together and purchase this plaque. So I was one of the special thanks to those groups.
That's
Did
great.
you say it's granite?
It will be, yeah.
Where did you find something like that?
I found it on an online store, an online company that can get it here very quickly.
Okay. Are they doing the engraving and
Mhm.
everything?
Yep, they'll do it start to finish, and I can get it here in about a week once we order it.
Very nice.
so we setting it inside or outside?
I think that depends
think
on,
about that a little bit.
how, do we have any idea how long? I mean, is this going to be up for a year, 5 years, forever? I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just asking.
I would recommend that we make it a permanent plaque or wherever we put it.
Maybe
One-
like in the flower bed out front, going in the
Yeah.
front.
We can
there.
definitely do that. You have to worry about then, of course, somebody coming by and doing something to it. You hope those kind of things don't happen, but unfortunately, they do happen
If we
sometimes.
put it outside.
Right by
wonder
the
if
door,
you
you
could-
have some.
But it's granted, it could
It'll
definitely,
weather.
it can maintain that.
Okay.
Wonder if you could have a granite stand built.
Well, the company makes it specially to be designed that way, for the stand to come with it. It can all be done together.
I think that's the answer right there, and put it out front in that garden.
Yep.
And somebody maintain flowers around it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure the Alumni Association might think about that.
You've got
Maybe.
so many cameras and stuff around
Sure,
there too, so it'd
sure.
be hard for somebody.
Yeah, that's the only thing I need to know,
Mainline.
so we can get
Yeah.
that done, but it'll say in honor of the graduating class of 2020, and we have a nice quote that Ms. Smith and we both talked about. I think it will go well there.
We can take a look at that when we
Sure.
walk out tonight to see where best place to display it would be.
I just like to thank Dr. Morris and
Yeah.
Ms. Smith on that, and those classes that also are pitching in to make it happen. That's great.
Yeah, it really is. I have something I want to say. I was privileged to work on the Hall of Honor, and what an honor it was for me. And I really enjoyed it. I thank you, Doctor and Alice. Thank you again for even starting this back up. But 3 incredible people. I sure had a good time in a time that things ain't very fun anymore and very different. I had a wonderful time doing that. 3 incredible people. And then I have something else. I read the Columbus Dispatch every day. I think most of you guys know that. And I got a smile on my face today because I opened it up and Abby Munn, Franklin B. Walter recipient, and that's pretty cool, Columbus Dispatch. And I thought I need to shout out to Abby about that, so that put a smile on my face this morning.
Anybody else have anything else? All right, if not, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Meeting adjourned.